Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. What's going on, Fear and Fiction family? We are back at it again. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to watch the videos, to like them, to comment. Please continue to give me story ideas. I will begin to implement those. And don't be afraid to submit things if you want to be anonymous or you want me to shout you out. I will. Now let's get into it. My father was not a man who scared easily. I want you to understand that before I tell you about the night, I watched his hands shake on the steering wheel of a car that would not start in the dark woods of East Tennessee. We were driving from Atlanta to Cincinnati, summer of 1961. Four of us in a 1958 Buick with the green book open on the front seat between my parents like a Bible they were reading to stay alive. My father knew those roads. He had driven them before. He knew which counties you passed through fast and which ones you did not enter after dark, and he had time to drive deliberately, so we would be through the worst of them before the sun went down. The car overheated at 9:47 at night. I know the exact time because my mother checked her watch the moment my father said the word that told us it was serious. He pulled off the two-lane road slowly, without the headlights, and eased into the dark space between two old oak trees, where the car would not be visible from the road. He turned the engine off. The metal ticked and hissed in the dark. Nobody spoke. That was the first thing that told me how serious it was. My brother was 7 years old, and he did not ask a single question. Children understand things their parents have not yet put into words. We understood that we were in a county where the standing rule was known by every black family who had ever driven through it, and that the rule was simple, and that we had broken it by being there after dark. My father needed the engine to cool, 45 minutes at minimum. He could not flag anyone down. He could not drive to a gas station. He could not do anything except sit in the dark under those oak trees and wait and hope that no car came slowly down that road, looking into the tree line with its lights. 23 minutes in, something moved in the woods behind us, not randomly. Animals move randomly, stop and start, circle back. This moved in a straight line toward the car, steady, deliberate, the sound of something heavy coming through underbrush that was not bothering to be quiet about it. My father heard it before any of us. I watched his shoulders drop and his hands come off his thighs and wrap around the steering wheel, not to drive, just to hold something. His knuckles went light in the dark. The sound stopped about 30 feet into the tree line. Whatever it was, it had found us. I pressed myself against the door and looked through the rear window. The moon was thin that night, just enough light to show the shapes of the trees and the dark space between them. And in that dark space, at the exact edge where the tree line ended and the road shoulder began, there was a shape that had not been there before, large, still, facing the car directly. It did not approach. It did not retreat. It stood at the edge of those woods, and it was aware of us the way a thing is aware of you when it has been watching for longer than you know. I felt that awareness on the back of my neck like a hand. My mother reached back without turning around and found my hand in the dark and held it. We sat like that for 11 minutes. I counted on my mother's watch because counting was the only thing that kept me from making a sound. The shape at the tree line did not move. It did not breathe loudly. It made no sound at all. 11 minutes. Then it was gone. No sound of movement, no cracking of brush. One moment it was at the edge of those trees, and the next moment there was only darkness where it had been. My father waited 4 more minutes. Then he started the car and pulled back onto the road and drove north and did not stop again until we were across the state line. He never said a word about what was at the tree line. Not that night, not ever. What I have thought about every day since I was 9 years old is this. I do not know what was standing in those woods watching our car in the dark. I have never known. And the reason that question has never left me is that both answers are equally terrifying. If it was human, we know what it meant in that county at that hour. If it was not human, then something was drawn to that road, to that tree line, to that specific dark space, for a reason that had nothing to do with us. And whatever that reason was, it had been there before we arrived, and it was still there after we left. My grandmother bought her cabin on the lake in 1953. The community she bought it in was the most famous black resort in the Midwest. 25,000 people on summer weekends, clubs and restaurants, entertainers coming up from Chicago on the train. She called it the most free she had ever felt in her life. After 1964, when integration opened other resorts to black families, the community emptied out over a decade. The clubs closed, the cabins went dark, the woods came back. Nobody from my family had stayed at her cabin in 30 years when I drove up there alone in July. I will say that I brought more gear than a woman sleeping 2 nights on a lake actually needs. I had a water filtration system, I had a compass, I had a first aid kit large enough to supply a small emergency room. My grandmother made that same drive in a church dress with a pot roast in the back seat. I am not her. The cabin was still standing. That surprised me. The windows were intact. The porch boards were soft in places, but held my weight. The lock opened with the key we had always kept on a hook in my mother's kitchen. When I pushed the door open, the smell hit me first. Not rot, not must, but something older and more specific. The smell of a place that has been holding its breath. On the far wall of the main room, my grandmother's framed photograph of the lake was hanging at an angle. Not fallen, angled, as if someone had reached up and turned it slightly. The face of the photograph was toward the wall. I straightened it. I told myself an animal had gotten in at some point. I put my things down and went to the lake and sat in the last of the afternoon light and felt close to her and did not think about the photograph again until much later. The first night was quiet and beautiful, and I slept better than I had in months. The second night I woke at 2:15 in the morning to music. It was coming from across the lake, not loud. The specific quality of music heard over water at night, where the distance strips away everything except the melody, and even that is uncertain. What made my skin go cold was not the music itself. It was that I almost recognized it, not a song I could name. Something older, something that existed before songs had names, something that came from a place in me that did not learn it, but simply knew it the way you know things that were put into you before you were born. It lasted 4 minutes, and then it stopped. I sat up and listened to the silence that came after. The lake was completely still, no wind, the kind of quiet that has weight to it. Then from directly outside the cabin, less than 10 feet from where I lay, a woman's voice said my grandmother's full name. Not loudly, conversationally. The tone of someone who has just recognized a person across a room. Her full name, both names, the name nobody called her except the people who had known her here in this place when she was young and free and alive. I did not breathe for a long time. I got up. I went to the door. I opened it. The porch was empty. The lake was still. The tree line at the far shore was a dark edge against a lighter sky. There was nothing there that I could see, but the air on the porch was different from the air inside the cabin. Warmer, not the warmth of a person, something more diffuse than that, something that had spread outward from a single point the way heat spreads from a coal that has been burning for a long time. I stood on that porch for a while. Then I said out loud, I am her granddaughter. I came because she always said this was the most free she ever felt. I do not know if that was the right thing to say. I know that after I said it, something in the air around the cabin changed in a way I cannot fully describe. Settled, maybe, like a question being answered. I did not sleep again that night. I sat on the porch until the sun came up and the lake went from black to gray to silver, and I thought about what it cost a black woman in 1953 to own a small piece of land in the Michigan woods, and what it means that whatever is on that land still knows her name. The photograph on the wall was facing forward when I left. I did not move it. The branch off the main trail was not on any map I had. I noticed it on the third morning of a solo backpacking trip in a section of national forest in western North Carolina. The trail had been rerouted at some point, and this branch was what remained of the old path. Too wide to be animal, too straight to be accidental. The trees on both sides spaced the way trees get spaced when something with intention cleared them, and has been gone long enough for the forest to mostly close back in, but not completely. The first thing that was wrong was the quiet. I had been in that forest for 2 days, and it was full of sound. Birds, wind in the upper branches, small animals in the underbrush. The moment I turned onto the old road, the sound stopped, not gradually, immediately. One step off the main trail, and I was in a different quality of air, still, dense, the kind of quiet that has been present for a long time. I followed the road for about a mile before it opened into a clearing, 8 foundations, maybe more at the edges, where the undergrowth had come back thick. One large central structure, maybe a clubhouse or meeting hall, its stone chimney still standing in the middle of the foundation like a gravestone. Stone steps leading to nothing, a rusted iron hook in a tree at the far edge, the kind used to hang a lantern. This was not a farming community. The foundations were too close together, the spacing too deliberate. Someone had built something here that was meant to hold people together, a retreat, a place to come and rest. The second thing that was wrong was the smell. Under the smell of pine and wet earth, there was something else, something that did not belong to the current year. Char, the specific cold smell of something that had been burned a very long time ago and whose ghost was still in the wood and stone of every surface in that clearing. I stood in the center of the clearing, and my body told me something my brain was slow to agree with. The clearing did not want me there. Not aggressively, not violently, the way a room that belongs to someone else does not want you. A specific kind of presence that you are standing inside of without permission. Near the base of the chimney, I found a child's shoe, leather, old, small, sitting upright in the grass at the base of the chimney as if placed there rather than dropped. Not rotted away to nothing the way something that had been outside for decades should have been. Placed, deliberately, recently. I did not touch it. I stood in that clearing for a long time. Every time I moved toward the path back to the main trail, the weight of the place increased. Not a sound, not a vision, a pressure. The specific sensation of being watched from multiple directions by things that are not moving and are not going to move but are absolutely present. 40 minutes passed. I know because I checked my watch when I finally made it back to the main trail, and the timestamp on my last photo was 40 minutes earlier. I do not remember the 40 minutes clearly. I remember deciding to leave. I remember standing at the entrance to the main trail. I do not remember the walk between those two things. I looked up the county historical records after I got home. A black resort community had operated in that section of forest from the 1920s through the mid-1940s. Founded by black professionals from Charlotte and Greensboro who bought the land collectively. Cabins, a clubhouse, a lake, a place to be free in the mountains. In 1946, the buildings burned. County records called the cause undetermined. No one was ever charged. The family stopped paying taxes after that. The county took the land. The National Forest absorbed it in the 1950s. The child's shoe at the base of the chimney. I do not know who placed it there or when. I do not know if it has always been there, or if someone who knew the history put it there as a marker. I do not know if the 40 minutes I cannot remember were 40 minutes of nothing, or 40 minutes of something I am not equipped to carry. What I know is that the clearing exists. The foundations are real. The history is in the county records. And whatever is in that clearing has been there since 1946, holding the space, in the quiet, in the cold smell of old char, waiting for someone to come down that road and stand still long enough to understand. The campground was full for Memorial Day weekend, and Site 12 was the only one left. The ranger at the booth looked at our reservation, looked at the site assignment, and then looked at us with an expression that I have replayed in my head many times since. Not unfriendly, something more specific than that. The expression of someone who has decided that warning you is not his place, and that you will understand soon enough. Site 12 was at the far edge of the campground, separated from the nearest site by 50 yards of old-growth pine. Private, quiet, a flat tent pad, a good fire ring, a picnic table. My wife said it was perfect. My 12-year-old son walked the perimeter of the site slowly and deliberately before he said anything, and what he said was, "Dad, something feels wrong here." Children are better at this than we are. They have not yet learned to talk themselves out of what their bodies know. The first night was uneventful. We had a good fire. The kids fell asleep. I told myself I had been imagining the ranger's expression and the feeling I had when we pulled into the site. That specific heaviness in the air, like walking into a room where an argument has just ended and the silence is still charged with it. The second night, I woke at 3:14 in the morning to a sound I have never heard before or since. I want to be precise about this because the sound is the part that matters most. It was not an animal. It was not the wind. It was human in origin. I am certain of that. But it was not a word. And it was not crying. It was the sound a person makes when they have gone past words and past tears into something deeper and older than either of those things. A sound from the bottom of a person. The sound of someone being unmade. It came from the pine trees to the north of our site. It lasted approximately 30 seconds. Then it stopped, and the woods were absolutely silent in a way that felt less like quiet and more like held breath. My wife was already awake. We lay in the tent and did not speak and did not sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, while my wife kept the kids at the picnic table, I walked into the pine trees to the north of our site. About 40 feet in a small clearing between the old trees, the grass was different. A rough circle, maybe 15 feet across, where the grass grew low and sparse, the way grass grows over ground that has been compacted by something heavy, repeatedly, over a long time. The trees at the edge of that circle were older than the trees around them, thicker, their roots pressed up through the soil in a specific way that I recognized later when I knew what I was looking at, as the way tree roots grow when they have had a long time to work around something buried. I did not stay in that circle. I went back to the campsite. After breakfast, I found the older black ranger who worked the maintenance route. I described the sound. He listened the way a person listens when they already know the end of the story you are telling. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he told me he had worked at that park for 22 years. That Site 12 had always had more complaints than any other site in the campground. That years ago he had pulled the county historical records to understand what he was dealing with. What he found in those records was an entry from 1931 that the county recorded as a disturbance. Community oral history described it differently and in more detail than the county had been willing to put in writing. The ground at the north edge of Site 12 was the specific ground where that entry referred to. He had been acknowledging it every time he passed on his maintenance route for 22 years, out loud, alone, telling whatever was there that he heard it and that it had not been forgotten. He looked at me and said, "I always try to put people in that site who will not be bothered by it, but we were full this weekend. I am sorry. My son did not ask to go home." On the drive out, he asked if we could come back the following summer. I asked why. "They should have someone around who knows they are there," he said. He is 12 years old, and he understood something in that campsite that it took me until I was standing in those pine trees to begin to understand. We are going back. July in Alabama smells like cut grass and charcoal, and something sweet underneath both of those things that I have never been able to name, but that means home to me in a way nothing else does. We have been holding our family reunion at the same outdoor pavilion in a state park since 1984. My grandmother chose the spot. She grew up nearby and she said the land felt right, and she wanted the family to have a place to return to that was not someone's house, not a church fellowship hall, but land, outdoor, rooted, permanent. Every summer since then, without exception, somewhere between 80 and 120 members of our family have driven from wherever they have scattered to and gathered under that pavilion with folding tables and matching t-shirts and enough food to feed twice our number. My great-uncle Luther has come to every single reunion. He is 91 years old this summer. He arrives early and he leaves late, and in between he sits in the same folding chair he has always brought, at the far end of the pavilion where the shade begins and the open clearing starts, and he watches. He has always watched. For 40 years I understood his watching to be the watching of an old man who is content to see his family around him. I did not understand, until this past July, that he was watching something specific. The reunion this year was louder than usual. A cousin had brought a speaker. 3 of my aunts were arguing about the potato salad, which happens every year and will never be resolved. The children were running between the pavilion and the tree line on the far side of the clearing, doing what children do with an open field and too much sugar in the middle of a hot afternoon. I was standing at the edge of the pavilion watching the children run when Luther came and stood beside me. He did not announce himself. He was simply there, the way very old people sometimes simply appear. Without looking at me, he said, "Your grandmother did not choose this place because the land felt right." I turned to look at him. He was watching the tree line on the far side of the clearing. His eyes were steady and focused in the specific way of someone who is not looking at the trees, but at something in front of the trees, something at the edge. He told me what happened in the summer of 1949, when he was 15 years old. I will not repeat the specific details of what he described because those details belong to the family and to the county records where they are written down, if you know where to look, in the careful language of people who wanted to document something without fully saying what it was. What I will tell you is that my grandmother had been 17 years old that summer, that she was there, that she chose this pavilion, this clearing, this specific outdoor space, deliberately and with full knowledge of what the ground under it had held, that she brought the family back to it every year as an act of witness, of presence, of refusal to let the land forget that people knew what happened here. And then Luther told me what he sees every year when the family arrives. At the edge of the tree line, he said, every reunion since 1984, they are there when we pull into the parking lot and they are still there when we leave. Sometimes 5 or 6 of them, sometimes more, standing at the edge of the trees and watching the reunion the way people watch something they have missed for a long time and are grateful to see again. He said, they watch the children especially. They watch the children run, and they do not move, but something about the way they stand changes when the children get close to the tree line. Something that is not threatening. Something that is closer to the way a person leans towards something they love. I looked at the tree line. My cousin's children were 20 feet from it, chasing each other through the grass. I watched the tree line for a long time. I did not see anything. Luther said, "You will not see them the way I see them. That summer changed something in what I can see. Your grandmother knew. She never told anyone else, because she did not want to frighten the family away from coming back. Coming back was the point." He went back to his chair. He sat down. He watched the rest of the reunion the way he has always watched. Quiet, still, seeing things the rest of us cannot see. That night, back home, I went through the box of old reunion photographs that my mother has kept since 1984. Every year, someone takes a group photograph in front of the pavilion with the clearing and the tree line behind us. I went through every photograph slowly, starting from the most recent and going back. In the photograph from 1984, the first reunion, I counted the shapes at the tree line for a long time before I was sure of what I was seeing. They are not clear. They could be shadows. They could be the way light falls on the edge of a forest in the late afternoon. They could be anything, but they are the same number every year, and they are in every photograph. I have reserved the pavilion for next July. The t-shirt argument has already started in the family group chat, and I'm letting it go on longer than usual because I think the noise of a family that loves each other is exactly the right thing for that clearing to hear. I think that is what my grandmother knew from the beginning. I think she built something at that pavilion that most people cannot see, and that Luther has been watching over for 40 years, quietly, from his chair at the far end of the shade. And I think the people at the tree line have been watching over us. Okay, if you made it this far, I want to thank you for taking the time to check out the stories. Please let me know how you feel about each and every story. Get in those comments. Tell me which one was your favorite. Please like, share, subscribe. Please hype the video. Please send in any ideas that you might have. I will jump on those as soon as I can. Have a great day.